Hey there, it's Angela Coulter with Conscious Connections. I wanted to talk with you a little bit this afternoon about authenticity and vulnerability because we talk about it a lot in context of consciousness and spirituality and evolution, but we're really not great at it, especially on social media, because we have a certain formula that people want to see. So I wanted to get on here because I had a little bit of a meltdown a little while ago, and it was something that had come up, and it came up unexpectedly. And I wanted to talk about that because it's really important to talk about that in context of doing our inner work. Now, I wanted people to see this because I'm the one who's working with people, and I sit with them through meltdowns and all kinds of shifts. And one of the things that I've talked about with friends of mine, peers, and whatnot, has been how when we talk about doing the deep work that we do, and I don't mean this to be like, oh, we want it to be dramatic, we want it to be painful. I don't believe that at all. I am all about ease and fun and love, and I know we love talking about rainbows and unicorns, and there is nothing wrong with that. However, as we are evolving and we are expanding in our consciousness, we are resolving so many things that the ego has held in our identities under so many different levels of consciousness, under so many different levels of separation, sometimes for many lifetimes, sometimes for many levels of ego. And so what we have, we equate crying with a negative thing that's painful and suffering equated and all that. That's not the case. Our physical bodies, by the way, guess what? Sometimes I cry, I sob in happiness. And that's one of the most amazing feelings in the world, is to have so much joy in my body that it cannot contain it physically, so that I have to expel it through or be able to balance myself through the tears. So many avoid some of the hard questions that the ego doesn't want to look at. We do a lot of skirting and dancing, and sometimes it's like having a drop of mercury on the table and you're trying to put your finger on it, just rolls around and evades you. But part of this commitment to consciousness is saying, yeah, I'm really not going to hide from myself anymore. And part of that vulnerability is to share it with others as well. And as somebody who has guided and helped and taught this kind of work for more than 12 years now, I hear a lot of times when I'll say something like, well, that really triggered me, that got me really angry, and people will say, I just can't even imagine you getting angry. Well, here we go. I wasn't not angry. I had a little trigger, a little meltdown not too long ago, and it was off of a really, what seemed to be a very topical conversation with my husband. And it brought up something that I had been very skillfully hiding from myself. Now, here's the thing, and I talk about this a lot. The more skillful we get in consciousness and expanded consciousness, and if you want to call it intuition or, enlightenment or whatever, the more crafty the ego gets at hiding things that it doesn't want to let go of or it still identifies with. And it doesn't feel like, sometimes it's just says, I don't feel like dealing with this and the reason we say I don't feel like dealing with this is because the ego feels really uncomfortable dealing with it because there's judgment involved. So there's so many layers to this. And the more we work in consciousness and do our inner work, and what I'm calling inner alchemy, is we are shifting the things that we have judged into a place of acceptance, and not only acceptance but gratitude. And then we can see it without that judgment. But a lot of times we have to see that judgment first, because often we have it masked under so many other things. So the thing that triggered me today was a really minor thing. I mean, on the surface, it was a really minor thing. And I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Like, I am so triggered. And the tears started flowing. And then I sat with it for a minute in observation, and my husband knows to let me do that. And I was just like, oh, this is what it's coming from. Like, this is how I feel, and this is what's come up for me, and this is what it's showing me. I is there for me to shift. It had nothing to do with him. Never does. It really doesn't have anything to do with the people or the things that trigger you. It has to do with what's inside of you. So, yeah, I cried. And, the ego says it judges crying as a bad thing, except I was simply expelling something that I had repressed that I thought I had gotten rid of. So as we go along in our consciousness expansion, we come to crumbs, like little tiny crumbs. Think of, if you know the story of the princess and the pea, it's like the little pea under all these layers. Sometimes it'll like finally pop up, and all it takes is one little trigger. And that's awesome. I will tell you that's awesome, because now I looked at it, I accepted it, I I thanked it for being there and for showing me what it needed to show me, and then I let it go. And if I don't see it, if I still repress it and hide it under other things, I won't do that. And that's the power of this kind of work. That's what the inner work is really about. So it's a combination of so many different things. But many avoid, and in the conversations I've had with some peers and friends of mine, is many will avoid the concept of deep inner work. When we say deep inner work, deep diving or whatever, because they feel like it's uncomfortable. They feel like it's suffering. And, and according to, New Age and New Thought, it's, suffering is to go by the wayside. Well, yeah, it is to go by the wayside, except suffering is simply a perception of the ego. So we can choose to simply observe, let something come up that has some emotion attached to it and let it go. Or we can continue to repress it and let it get bigger, because that's what happens. It'll keep on getting bigger. And I am so grateful to be in the place where I do so much regular self-work. I am committed to it every day, every morning at 6 a.m. I get up, I do meditation, self-work, reflection, not necessarily all in that order. And so I'm so glad to be that committed that when something comes up, it just pops up like that. Now, is it uncomfortable? Because then it causes tears and, sometimes anger. Yes, it is uncomfortable, and it can be. But because it makes me look at things that I've repressed. And in cases like this, is something that was so repressed I didn't even know it was there. But I am so happy, and that was here and gone within 45 minutes. Bam. And now I feel so much better, so much lighter, so much clearer. And it's very funny, because now I'm here doing this video when I had done a different video this morning about authenticity, and I was like, oh no, this is so much better. So I thank my expanded self for allowing that example to come up. But don't avoid the deep work. I'm here to help you with that. There are others who are here to help you with that. And it's not that you can't do it without somebody else, but it helps to have others around you who understand the perspective. My husband and I have been together for a long time, and he understands that that's what I'm doing when this comes up. And so it's not something I take personally. That takes consistency, and it takes practice. So that was my note in authenticity today. Stay tuned. I've got a lot more to share. Thanks.